Benefits of lifting the Toyota Tacoma. Are there any? I think there's a few. Well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to Robmotive. And I've been thinking, are there really any benefits to lifting the Toyota Tacoma, other than the looks and the things like that? And the more I thought about it, and an event that happened last night here in Central Ohio convinced me that there are a few benefits to lifting the Toyota Tacoma. So let's get into it. Number one, it can increase the value of the truck if sold privately. I think it takes someone who appreciates what goes into lifting the Toyota Tacoma to make sure that it's done correctly. That there's no rubbing of the wheels and tires, we'll get into that in a minute, and that all of the geometry is still right, like all the connections and things underneath, because the last thing you want to do is lift and have an issue. And people out there who know value those things. Number two, it's easier to get into and out of in some cases. Of course, it depends on your height. I am a towering 5'9.5", and I'm right at that kind of middle point where a lift is good, but if I was a little bit lower, it probably wouldn't be. It would make it more difficult to get in and out of. But what I have found that it's easier to step up into the truck than to step across or down into it. And I think at my height, you don't even need side steps. I can walk up to the truck, grab something. We're going to be having a grab handle installed here, but grab something and just kind of step right into the truck. Much easier to do, I think, than even at stock height with the steps on. When I bought the truck, I think it was actually my 2020, it came with side steps, and I found that they always got in the way. I was stepping over them to get in, and I was stepping over them to get out. So if you're gonna lift and you're, going with about a 2 or 3 inch lift or something like that, and you're around my height or even taller, definitely makes it easier to get in and out of the truck. Number 3, clearance for the trails. Now, I'm not a big off-roader, primarily only because there aren't a lot of opportunities where I live. But if you are, obviously it makes sense to have the truck higher up in the air to avoid anything that's underneath. If you've ever looked underneath the Toyota Tacoma, not only are there bits and pieces of metal that hang down, like the exhaust, but there's also some wiring under there. And the last thing you want to do is catch that wiring on something and rip it off. That would be a disaster. Getting the truck up in the air makes it much more conducive to safe off-roading. Now, there's always a limit, of course. I mean, if you're going over a trail that has fallen trees and they're all 3 feet tall and there's ruts and things sticking up, you have to use a little common sense and know that it's not a tank. A few days ago, I had a comment from somebody asking me about that. Should I lift my truck because there are trails I can't go on because my truck is too low? And I think the answer there is there's always going to be a trail you can't go on, no matter how high you lift your truck. After all, like I said, it's not a tank. It's a Toyota Tacoma. But definitely lifting it up a bit will make it more versatile when it comes to more rugged off-road trails. Number 4, it's much easier to work under. The truck I have right now is lifted about almost, we'll call it 2 inches in the front, kind of to level it out a bit, right? But it's not really any higher than that when it comes to the whole truck. I mean, the back is stock, it's the same. I was under there doing something not too long ago, and I discovered that, having the 3.5 inch lift that I had before on my 2020 gave me a lot more clearance underneath the truck. I think I was messing around with the spare in the back or something. I wanted to get under and look at a way to do something. I don't remember. But a lot more room to do things like oil changes. I mean, if you don't have a lift and you don't want to put it up on some kind of a stand, which, by the way, I never trust those. You can get stands, and I know people use them all the time, and this is just a personal thing for me, but I don't like to put them up in the air. I suppose if you have to, you could go with those little ramps that you can drive up on. But my biggest fear in doing that was always going over the front of them. You know, there's nothing really on the front of them to stop. And I wonder how many people out there have actually driven over the front. Then you have to whip out a jack the truck up in the air because you have to pull that thing out. Chances are it's going to be stuck underneath the frame of your truck. And you can damage things too. Never did like those. Number 5, and this is what I was referring to in the beginning, an event that happened here. It happened last night. We had torrential rains here. And when that happens, you get flooding. The freeways were flooded. There's a big river that flows through the area. It was spilling over its banks. And of course, if you're in a car, you're going to be lower down and you're going to chance water coming in or even stopping you altogether, shutting the vehicle down. The last thing that you want. Having a lifted Toyota Tacoma allows you to go through things like that. And a little caveat there, you really never should go through anything unless you know how deep it is. I mean, what if the road was washed out and there was a big dip and you go cruising through it? It's going to be a bad thing. So make sure that if you do go through deep water, you know how deep it really is. But definitely handy in suburban areas that are prone to flooding when you get a lot of rain. And I think that happens all over the place. Sooner or later, you're going to get a big storm, going to dump 3-4 inches of rain. You're going to have trouble. If you have a lifted Tacoma, it's not going to hold you back. Number 6, it allows for larger tires, for looks and for function. You know, for me, there's nothing like a lifted Toyota Tacoma anyway. I think they look awesome. But then you have to add wheels and tires, or at least bigger tires, because it just doesn't look right if you've got a couple of little donuts on there. That's what they remind me of, on a lifted truck. You have to go with something bigger, and I think they look awesome on the truck. As far as function goes, obviously, if you're an off-roader, you're going to want something a little more aggressive, kind of an all-terrain tire, or even a mud tire, depending on where you're taking the truck. Number 7, personal preference. This is a personal preference item. It just looks better. As I mentioned, I think the Toyota Tacoma is built to be lifted. By that, I mean it just looks so awesome with a lift. And you don't have to go crazy. You know, on the one that I have now, I mentioned earlier, it's just a 2-inch or so lift in the front to kind of level it out. Changes the whole look, the whole appearance of the truck. You can go bigger, and I like bigger. You know, 3 to 4, 5, 6-inch lifts, something like that, with the right wheel and tire setup is awesome on the Toyota Tacoma. Anyway, there definitely are benefits, both form and function, to lifting the Toyota Tacoma, in my opinion. Leave a comment. Let me know what you think. Do you agree? I'd be curious to know. Also, real quick, I do have 2 additional channels. Robmotive, JT, all about Jeep Gladiators, currently the Jeep Gladiator Mojave, and Robmotive MT, all about mini trucks or compact trucks, currently the Hyundai Santa Cruz. Check them out, and if you're interested, please consider subscribing. Thanks for watching. Stay lifted out there. Bye.